Did you know that the very first Flashforge Creator model had a wooden body? Although this construction might seem strange to most of us now, at that time some brands were producing 3D printers with wooden plywood bodies. If you ask me, this material makes a technological product look more like a prototype than a finished product. Or it gave the printer a nostalgic vibe as if it had been made 40 years ago. Yet we're talking about a device that was released for sale in 2012. But even back then this printer was capable of color printing, because it had dual nozzles. However, using the system or coloring an object was not as easy as it is now. So we could even say that the Creator is one of the ancestors of color printing. 14 years have passed since then. What's changed? Today we're looking for the answer with the 5th generation Creator. Let's dive in. I would describe Flashforge as a brand that, rather than pioneering the market with innovations, offers existing technologies at more accessible prices without compromising on quality. In my opinion, the Creator 5 and Creator 5 Pro are examples of this. I said they don't usually lead the way, but similarly, the models they release are generally printers that make an impact and operate reliably. The Creator 5 Pro is a strong candidate to be one of these. I tested it extensively. PLA, PETG, ABS, ASA, PA, color prints, color comparisons with devices using similar technology. You'll be able to find all of these in the video. First, let's take a look at its design and technical features. Then, we'll continue with the prints I made. The Creator 5 Pro is designed in a simple way, following quite basic design principles. While plastic material is used for the printer's outer casing, plexiglass is preferred for the front and rear panels as well as the top cover. Even though it is not a very large printer, buyers should still pay attention to its dimensions. The device is 44 centimeters wide, 41 centimeters deep, and 46.5 centimeters high up to the end of the printer body. With the top cover attached, the height reaches 72 centimeters. The filaments are mounted on the hangers next to the printer, and with 4 spools of average size, the depth of the printer can reach up to 60 centimeters. There is a color touchscreen in the upper right corner. The use of this screen, which has an adjustable angle, is quite comfortable, and one of the important details for me is that it offers multi-language support. When we look inside the Creator Pro's enclosure, we encounter a design that is out of the ordinary. Normally we are used to having the print heads at the back. Here, however, the 4 print heads that allow us to print in color with almost no waste are positioned on the right side. Although it causes a bit of confusion at first, the system is the same. In the print area, we see a volume with a width, depth and height of 256 millimeters, which is something we've become accustomed to in recent years and has almost become a standard. The print bed also uses a PEI-coated flexible spring steel plate. As expected, leveling is done fully automatically and doesn't tire the user at all. Since it's a device with 4 print heads, during the initial setup, you have to remove the print bed once to perform precise offset calibration for each nozzle. So, apart from having to remove the bed, everything else is completely automatic. For vertical movement of the bed, there are 2 trapezoidal lead screws and steel rods on the left side and 1 each on the right side, while the print head moves on a steel linear rail, and steel rods are also used for X-axis movements. Inside the printer, there is an active heating system that can heat the interior of the enclosure up to 65 degrees Celsius. This system allows you to use many types of filaments, especially engineering filaments like ABS, ASA, and PA. The 5 Pro is a fast 3D printer that can reach speeds of 500 millimeters per second with an acceleration of 30,000 millimeters per second squared. At high speeds, especially those using PLA filament will need good cooling. Flashforge has come up with a nice solution for this as well. Instead of circulating the hot air inside, the printer blows cool air taken from outside onto the model, which improves print quality. The printer has wireless connectivity features. In this way, you can send slice models remotely, start the print, and monitor it from your computer, tablet, or smartphone via Flash Studio. Thanks to its integrated camera, it's also possible to observe the print status. There needed to be an increase in the number of printers with multiple heads like this one. I also think that the 5 Pro comes with some really nice features. There are aspects that I find lacking. There are also things that make me wish they had been done differently. And there are features that I really like. I'll be covering all of these. Now let's first take a closer look at the prints I've made, and then I'll share my overall thoughts with you. I actually used the Creator 5 Pro in a project video before making this review video. That's why I'm going to show you more than one Ronaldo bust now. Of course, working on multiple projects was also an advantage for me. I was able to conduct many tests with different types of PLA. Among these, there are high-flow PLA types as well as matte PLA. Or there are also PLAs with glittery, transparent colors like this, which are light transmitting. I'm extremely satisfied with the overall surface quality. In my first prints, I got very good results without changing almost any settings in Flashforge's slicing software, Flash Studio. Now you can see one of the classic test prints I usually do. Usually with this model, I try to print at the maximum height the printer can handle. And since this is a print without any supports, I can also test how much stringing or sagging occurs with the printer. I'm quite satisfied with the overall surface quality of this print, which was made at a speed range of 200 to 300 millimeters per second. This is a print I've made many times, but the color I think suits it best is always red. As I mentioned, the surface quality is quite nice. There is no stringing at the pointed areas. However, in areas without support, some minor sagging is noticeable. I also made 2 more prints where we can see the maximum print size. One of them is already inside the printer right now, but I'll show you that one up close as well. These are special filaments. That's why they were printed in vase mode. When we turn it like this, the color changes. I call them iridescent colors. This one you see here is made up of 3 different colors. It starts with a gold color, then as you turn it, it shifts to copper, and finally the color turns completely black. You are now seeing another print of the same model. In that one, there's a constant transition between red and black. I like it, and since it looks nice on decorative products like this, I wanted to show it to you as well. We're not moving on to colorful prints yet. We'll continue with more solid colors. What I'm doing is again one of the standard tests. By printing the same G-code 5 times in a row, I observe whether the printer delivers consistent results. There were also some small supports on this model. There was no difference either in surface quality or in the areas where I removed the supports. I wasn't really expecting major differences anyway, but I wondered if there might be some minor changes. Could there be a vibration effect on the surface of one print while there isn't on another? While bed leveling works perfectly on one side, I wanted to do a small test to see if it would perform the same in the next print, and I got a very successful result. The Creator 5 Pro is a printer equipped with hardened steel nozzles. Therefore, you can use carbon fiber or fiberglass reinforced filaments with this printer. The 2 parts you see here were printed with carbon fiber reinforced PLA. The surface quality is also extremely impressive. Carbon fiber reinforced PLA is harder compared to regular PLA. Therefore, it can be preferred over PLA in situations where you need extra hardness. For example, what you see here are vacuum cleaner heads, and you could change the lower diameter or the upper shape and diameter as you wish. The designer set it up that way. In case anyone watching needs it, I'll also put the link for this in the description section. Now let's take a look at the prints I made with carbon fiber reinforced PETG. These 2 prints you see are devices made for hanging and securing acoustic and electric guitars on the wall. Thanks to both the durability of PETG and the slightly glossy appearance provided by the carbon fiber, they turned out to be very nice prints. I'm also extremely satisfied with the print quality. You may have noticed that I use this filament frequently in my videos. In fact, this was even asked in one of my recent videos. It's Beta Filament's carbon fiber reinforced PETG filament. Another functional print is an accessory that can be used to hold the DJI Pocket 3 more comfortably while filming. I had previously printed one of these for myself, but when a friend of mine who owns the same camera found out about it, he asked me to gift him the print. So since I had the opportunity, I printed another one for myself. It has a very nice surface quality. You may have noticed this here. You can see the red supports. Here I used PLA. So besides printing in color, you can also use a multi-extruder printer like the 5 Pro for different support materials. Even though it's a small example, this is one as well. PLA and PETG are filaments that do not fuse with each other. That's why they can be used as support materials for each other like this. Apart from this, there are also different types of filaments produced entirely for support purposes. For example, if you are going to print much more complex structures and it will be difficult to remove the supports afterward, there is a type of filament called PVA that dissolves in water. You can use this as a support material in your printer, and later you can put it in water and wait for the supports to dissolve on their own. There is also HIPS filament among the support materials, which dissolves in limonene, or there are easily breakable PLAs available. These can also be used solely for support. Color prints are nice, yes, but if you have a printer with multiple heads like this, you can use different materials and different support materials simultaneously in the same print. This is a huge advantage. Even though this is a print made just for show, let me show you this as well. This is the most interesting version of the Benchy I've ever printed. Only the outer frame of the ship has been modeled, or the other surfaces have been completely removed. What you see in white are tree supports, and they are not modeled this way. You really just turn on the support setting and print the model in midair like this. So it's an interesting example both for using different types of supports and also as a dual color print. I also made a few small functional prints with PETG. All of these parts are pieces that can be used on the printer itself. You can attach one of them to the back of the printer during flow calibration to collect waste. The other print is attached to the filament entry points. Normally a Teflon tube is not used here. If you want a neater appearance, you can integrate these parts into your printer by attaching them. As with previous prints, I am quite satisfied with the print quality of PETG. One of the important features of this printer is that it allows us to use engineering filaments. The Model 5 does not have internal chamber heating or a top cover. However, since the 5 Pro has internal chamber heating up to 65 degrees and a top cover, we can use engineering filaments much more comfortably. I also did a few tests related to this. One of my important tests was this car part you see here. This is the front grille of a car. ASA filament can be used in places like car parts or motorcycle parts because it has two important features. One of these is its high temperature resistance and the other is its high ultraviolet resistance, which allows it to be used outdoors. After the print was finished, I specifically didn't remove the supports so that you could see just how challenging a print this actually is, because the model rises directly on top of the supports. Not only does it make printing more difficult, but it also makes the layer lines more pronounced. Of course, this is even more visible in white color. However, you'll notice a deep mark right here. This mark here is entirely related to a power outage. At this point, we're taking a short break in the video for a brief announcement. Actually, I'm not speaking English right now. In fact, I don't even know English, but thanks to Heygen AI, a powerful artificial intelligence tool, I can deliver my video content to you in English. In fact, if I wanted to, I could even start speaking Spanish right now.
Quizá debería abrir un nuevo canal de YouTube para mis publicaciones en español.
Or maybe in Japanese.
日本人ってテクノロジーの面ですごく進んでるんじゃないの？もしかしたら新しい YouTube チャンネルも日本語でやるのもありかもね。
If you also want to publish your content globally like I do, you can use Heygen AI, which provides dubbing support in more than 175 languages. Let's pick up where we left off. Those who have used ASA or ABS before are already familiar with this information. But for those who don't know or haven't used them, I'll give a brief reminder. Power outages are one of our biggest nightmares with these materials because they require a very high bed temperature. It can reach temperatures like 100, 110, even 120 degrees, and the Creator 5 is a printer whose bed can heat up to 120 degrees. Before printing, I applied adhesive to the bed, just to be on the safe side. The chamber heating was set to 65 degrees. I started the print. After maybe 10 hours, there was a power outage. I immediately thought, okay, that's it. The print will detach from the bed. Still, I waited. I didn't remove it right away. After about an hour, the power came back. I went and checked it with my hand. I saw that it was still holding on. I thought, okay, we're saved. We can continue. So I told it to resume and it was able to continue printing from where it left off without the slightest shift in the axis. There was no shift in the axis. That's great, but why is there this layer line? The Power Outage Resume feature is already available in almost all 3D printers. However, when we tell the printer to resume after a power outage, most of the time the printers reprint the layer they were on. That's actually what's happening here as well. Because it prints the same layer again, the plastic tends to overflow. This is not a decorative product. Yes, it's something that could affect the appearance of a car, but with a little sanding or some simple processing, it can easily be fixed and become a usable part. That's why I don't see this as a major problem. I'm quite satisfied with the print I got. Another important engineering filament is, of course, ABS. I also made 2 car parts using ABS. What you see here is a ventilation grill. ABS and ASA are 2 types of filament with very similar structures. Both can withstand high temperatures. That's why there's absolutely no problem using them, especially in the interior parts of cars. However, its resistance to ultraviolet is not as high as ASA. This model you see was produced for an exterior part of the car. If used directly, it could probably cause problems in the long run. However, if it is painted with a UV-resistant paint, there will be no problem using it. By the way, maybe I went a bit too deep into the filament details, but I'm also extremely satisfied with the print quality. First of all, there wasn't the slightest problem with bed leveling on the bottom side, and on the top surface there are almost no nozzle marks. Although there are very few surfaces where the layers can be observed, I was quite satisfied with the work I did using engineering filaments. Here you can see the prints I made with PA, another important type of engineering filament. It is a very difficult material. In fact, among all the filaments I have used, I can say that PA is the most difficult material to print with. You already saw that I tried printing the same part I made with ABS also with PA. Besides that, I printed gears. It is a filament with a very low coefficient of friction. It is very durable. It has a high coefficient of elasticity, high impact resistance, and can be used functionally in many projects. However, as I said, printing with it is not easy at all. It definitely requires heated enclosure. You need to have a printer with a closed case. If possible, the bed temperature should be above 100 degrees. Of course, it varies depending on the material and filament, but for example, when I used this PA, I raised it to 115 degrees, but I wasn't successful on the first try. As you can see, the result was unsuccessful like this. I could have tried this repeatedly with different settings. However, to be on the safe side, I applied adhesive to the bed again. So this first attempt was made without using any adhesive. After experiencing issues here, I applied adhesive and was able to print both these gears and this car part without any lifting at all. After seeing that it works very well on the industrial side, let's move on to the fun part now. Let's also take a look at these colorful prints. My first attempts were these Pokemon models you see here, Pikachu and Snorlax. It's like they're designed as if they're stuck to the glass, looking out from there, two models like that. The color transitions are extremely beautiful. There are no stains at all. There's no color bleeding. I'm also quite satisfied with the surface quality. When I was printing this, the World Cup was still going on and Norway had a match. I saw that they had made a Holland jersey. I immediately wanted to print that one too. Overall, the color transitions look very nice and the print quality is just as good. Right on the chest part of the jersey, I saw two white lines. This actually wasn't a result I was expecting. I checked again to see if there was a problem with the printer, the model, or the settings I used and started a second print. When I printed the same model a second time and saw the exact same two lines at the same layers, I realized that this wasn't related to the printer or the settings, but rather to the model itself. I have a few more prints in color. As you can see, it's a toy model. There are a lot of color transitions between black, white, and red. Just like in the other prints, there is no problem with the color transitions. I don't notice any axis shifting or issues between layers caused by the head change. It's a very nice print. I wanted to print a few more models that spread across the build plate. Without realizing it, I kept going with the Pokemon and football player themes. As you can see, this is a keychain in the shape of Charmander. The prints covered the entire build plate. This was one of the important tests for me. Apart from the color change, I wanted to observe whether I would encounter any issues with prints that are spread completely across the build plate, especially with these kinds of multi-part prints. And I was able to complete the prints without the slightest problem. Again, I made a few more colorful prints that spread across the build plate like this. These are the prints called Hueforge that you see here, which look as if you're creating a painting with a 3D printer. One of them is a motorcycle in the style I've always dreamed of. I really like the design. The fact that it's in black and white tones gives it an even nicer, nostalgic feel. Anyway, let's leave the motorcycle aside and focus on the print. The print is very beautiful. A very clean first layer has been laid. For a model printed with 100% infill, the top layer also turned out perfectly flawless and smooth. Another Hueforge Darth Vader, a 4-color print. Again, it turned out really well. When I look closely, just like in the previous model, the surface quality is quite impressive. There are no nozzle marks on the upper parts. Of course, it's not just PLA. You can create colorful prints with any material you want, including TPU. It's difficult to print in color with flexible filaments. Printers with systems like AMS or CFS in particular cannot print in color with TPU. In other words, at least a hardness of 90A or 95A is not sufficient. Printing is possible with much harder special TPUs. However, there was no such limitation on the 5 Pro. So while printing with TPU, I also tried out some small colorful print experiments. What you see here is a small toy model. You can also make keychains like this. It would actually make a lot of sense. Not only does it increase the product's durability by making it unbreakable, but it also won't scratch other items you put next to it. The surface quality is very nice. I can say that it's almost as good as something printed with PLA. I printed a few more sample pieces. These Game Boys you see here were also actually designed to be keychains, but I increased the scale a bit so I could extend the print time and observe the surface quality. They turned out really well. Just like with PLA or ABS, where the top surfaces come out nicely on large areas, the prints I made with TPU were also close to that quality. We've talked a lot about keychains. I mentioned that it could make sense. Especially motorcyclists often use this type of keychain. And as I said, since the material is flexible by nature, it won't cause any scratches. So I think TPU can be used in these kinds of applications. Now we've come to the final print test. This is the Ninja Turtle model you see here. It's become a standard test model for me. I especially wanted to set a standard so that we can compare the colored print tests I've done before and the ones I'll do in the future with each other. So especially in the reviews or test videos I've done in the last few months, you can see this as an example. And if there are other printers I've reviewed on my channel that you're curious about, this will be a common model. First, let's take a look at the surface quality and color transitions. There's no difference from the other prints I've made, and honestly, it didn't surprise me when I finished the print. When we look at the print, it has a very nice surface quality. Just like with the other prints, there isn't any area that I could point out or mention as a problem. Again, when I look at the color transitions and close-up details, I can say that I didn't encounter even the slightest problem. One of the things I observed in the prints I made with different printers using this model was the vibration effect that appeared on the head part. Even if I say it's slightly noticeable when I look very closely, it would be unfair to call this a problem on a print made at speeds of 200 or 300 millimeters per second. For the past few years, the print quality of printers has always been compared to bamboo. In other words, that's taken as the reference. Bamboo printers are taken as the standard. People ask whether a printer is above, below, or close to that level of print quality. I think this was quite natural until recently, because with the first printers it released, bamboo really pulled ahead in this regard. But now, I think other printers have closed that gap. Lately, with most of the printers I've used, I hardly ever have any issues related to print quality anymore. Now, it seems like the main reason for choosing a 3D printer is no longer print quality, but rather whether the device is reliable in the long run and whether it operates stably during long prints. Or questions like whether I'll be able to find spare parts for it in the future have started to become more prominent. Now, let's take a look at how this print compares to other devices with similar technology, at least those capable of color printing. Because one of its most important features is that it can produce color prints without any waste. Let's take a look at both the amount of waste and the print times. Right now you can see some popular printers for which I previously printed this model. Here, for printers with a single nozzle, the waste is calculated as the prime tower plus any additional waste, while for multi-head or multi-nozzle systems like the Creator 5 Pro, only the prime tower is counted as waste. If you're ready, I'm going to reveal the print results. Aside from the model itself, the only piece we could call waste was the prime tower. This weighed 96 grams. The print was completed in 16 hours and 10 minutes. When compared to other printers capable of color printing, we all saw together that this is quite advantageous and one of the better printers. Overall, I was very satisfied with the print quality. That is, it caused almost no problems in both color prints and single color prints. I say almost, and this isn't really a problem, but apart from the market left after a power outage, I didn't encounter any issues. There are aspects where I expected it to be technically better. For example, when you want to change the filament, the cutting process is not practical. You have to do this manually. In fact, sometimes I struggled with one hand. There were even times when I removed the head and cut the filament with both hands. Another point is that the printer performs flow calibration inside the machine. There isn't a separate compartment for this, nor is it expelled outside the printer. After all, they didn't integrate the multi-head system into this printer later on. For a device designed from scratch, I think the flow calibration waste shouldn't have been directed inside the printer. It's not a major issue, but I do consider it a design flaw. For those who want to use engineering filaments, having the filaments exposed could be a problem. For example, TPU or especially nylon absorbs moisture when left exposed for a long time, and this negatively affects print quality.
The camera is bad.
It can only be used to a certain extent for print monitoring, but other than that, for shooting time-lapse videos, both the resolution is very low and its position is in an illogical place. In almost a third of the image, you see the body of the printer. However, the remote connection part works flawlessly. I had no problem sending files remotely, starting prints, or monitoring them. The printer delivers very successful results when it comes to color printing. Additionally, changing the print head is quiet and trouble-free. Whether for color prints or for using support materials, the Creator 5 is one of the ideal printers at this point. I just wish the print area was a bit larger. It's definitely sufficient for many projects. A 256mm build plate is something we already see in many brands. but it would have been great if there was a slightly larger area for car or motorcycle parts. The printer comes 90% pre-assembled, but I didn't find attaching the parts very easy. Especially new users should definitely open the user manual. In fact, there is a very good assembly video on YouTube. I'll share that with you as well. If you follow the steps one by one during assembly, you'll make things much easier for yourself. One of the things I cared about most was how much noise it made during the printhead change. In this regard, it really satisfied me. Overall, you don't hear very loud noises from the printer. The loudest noise comes when the fans are running. Of course, you wouldn't want to stand next to it and do other things for a long time, but it won't bother you if you're working in a separate room. The leveling is quite successful. I had already noticed this while printing models that covered most of the bed in many tests, but I also did a first layer test. Even if the nozzle gets very close to the bed at certain points, this does not turn into a printing problem. The results are quite good. It's a printer with a wide range of uses. It's a printer that can be preferred by beginners, hobbyists, those who want to print colorful models for educational purposes in schools, people who want to produce and sell commercial products, or those who want to work with engineering filaments. But if you say you won't be using engineering filaments, then the Creator 5 model, which does not have a top cover or internal chamber heating, can also be considered. Especially in terms of price performance, I think the Creator 5 might currently be one of the most reasonable models available on the market. Of course, we will also see whether it continues to deliver the same performance in long-term use. I will continue to use the printer. From time to time, I'll also share updates about it on my Instagram page. If you're not already following me, my username on Instagram is the same as it is on YouTube. Yes, that's all I have to say about the Creator 5 Pro. I hope this video has been helpful for you and has given you some ideas. May your printer run smoothly and your prints be flawless. See you in the next video. Take care.